I got up at 4 this morning to put more wood in the wood stove to heat the house. It was starting to cool off. The wood stove is blasting to keep the house warm here. It's freezing outside. But it's winter in Upper Canada, and that's why. This is a show about jewelry. Why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith.
We're the Cannabis Goldsmiths.
As a Canadian, snow defines me, so I am not going to complain about it. It's like, this is winter, this is Canada, and a lot of good comes from winter. It's a great time to think, to process, to come up with new ideas. You're locked inside, you're like, you can't do all that much outside. You start thinking, you start doing stuff. Anyway, so that's what winter's about usually. It's a time to come up with the amazing shit that you're going to do in the summertime. But this week's show is about, I was going to do a show this week about artists destroying their work, right? But I'm not. This is maybe a little bit similar, but this is work being destroyed, but not on purpose. Today I'm going to talk about the preservation of digital art and the preservation of, I guess, art itself or photography for the future. In a digital world. You're going to hear a snowblower go by, a snow clearing machine every so often, I think, because it's snowing outside. Anyway, the episode is about the preservation of art in a digital world. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but there doesn't seem to be much old content online. Like, the search engines are cutting it off so that it's really hard to find older content now online. And I think the reason why they're doing this is that they're preparing us all for the pivot to AI-driven search, which will be the search box, you type it in and it will give you the answer. It's not even going to give you links probably to where the answer came from. Or if there are links, people are going to have to pay to have the links included in the answer. So I think that's where it's going. You can already see search is it's really bad. It's so bad. But anyway, try and find something old, right? And that's not even physical art. I mean, just digital. Say digital photographs from 15 years ago are lost in the sea of really quick photography, short form video, the extreme speed of the internet now. Stuff is disappearing, is getting washed away digitally. So how do you deal with that? Well, there are two ways to look at it, right? There's a commercial way. I'm trying to digitize a collection of photography that I took when I was a young man. It's the entire photographic archive collection of Tribe magazine, which was a which was a DJ culture magazine in Canada in the 90s. Electronic music culture, DJ culture, house music, rave scene, that kind of, if you're familiar with like a Mix Mag or an Herb magazine, if you're that old, it's sort of like that, but 100% Canadian, right? And monthly and published for well over a decade. So all the photography content from that I have, and it's all negatives and slides. It needs to be digitized. So I'm getting prepared to do that. It's a huge job, and I've been considering it very carefully because this is my life's work, and I want to, not only do I want to preserve that for me, so I get perhaps some recognition for taking it, which would be great, But I also want the content to make the content available in the best possible way for Canadians of the future to see, and people around the world to see, because it's basically a snapshot of a lost culture, a culture that's vanished, that's gone. This is a time before the internet fully hit in North America. And you can see in the pictures the internet starting to come into people's lives, and over the course of this decade. It's incredible. So these photos, I want people of the future to be able to see them. And I've been giving this so much thought, like what's the best way for me to prepare them, first off, to prepare them for this task, because they're negatives. They have to be scanned or rephotographed to convert to digital format. And then how do I store them for the future? And then I want to give them eventually, when I'm gone, to a consortium of galleries here in Canada, or entities where they can be hopefully preserved so that Canadians of the future can see them. Now, these are all kinds of different tasks that I want to do with this collection. First off, like, they have to be digitized. So if the originals are destroyed, then there'll be something left over. My concern was, okay, I don't want to, if I'm bequeathing this stuff to arts, cultural entities in Canada, I don't want to give them a box of slides, right? I want to give them some kind of idea of what this content is about. There'll be descriptions of each image and dates when they were shot and this kind of stuff, because it's important to have attribution and for this content. So people of the future who are researching it will be able to see what it means, and will be able to say, oh, this was a time when this so-and-so was going on, or people dressed like this, or they did this, or they listened to this kind of music. All this already has been lost, right? There are no photographs of this time. There's some few photographs of this time online in, you'll see some trickle out every so often. But these were mostly shot with people who brought cameras, these disposable cameras or whatever, into events and took a few pictures. But they didn't, it's not consistently applied across a decade of photographic coverage. This is the difference of the Tribe magazine images and someone else who has brought in a camera and shot a roll of film at an event. So it's a big body of work, and I've been really thinking about how to deal with it and to prepare it best for its eventual destinations in the best possible way for people of the future to see. And when you start taking a long view like this about art, you're thinking about what kind of file formats do I have to save these images in? How big do the files have to be? What kind of color models or anything do they have to be? All these things. When you start digitizing negatives and film, or even flat art, like if you're a painter and you're rephotographing your paintings at a super high res, for digital archival purposes or for marketing or whatever, it's the same thing. It's a complicated job to do correctly. So yeah. So I was thinking about that, and then I was very early with Tribe magazine on the internet. We were the first Canadian magazine to have a website, to be online back in the day. And I know modern listeners here will say, well, wow, that's a dinosaur. I've had a long view of the storage and preservation of the data that I used to create the magazine. So I burned some CD-ROMs back then, decades ago. And these CD-ROMs are starting to fail. You can't read them anymore. Whatever they're made of, the dyes or whatever in the CD-ROMs, they don't last a long time. And that made me wonder, what in the future is anybody going to be able to read like CD-ROMs like 50 years from now? Will anyone be able to read them? Back in the early 90s, it was so difficult to move files. Like when I created a magazine cover, for example, we'd photograph a magazine cover. I put it together with the software, and we had to, the file was so big and there was no way to get it to the place where the plates had to be output or made. There was no internet that could handle the file that big. There was no disk that could carry it. Like now you put it on a thumb drive and you could like carry it in your pocket over there. Back then, I had to span the file across like 30 floppy disks, like a zip file that we have these days, a compressed file, but spanned across 30 floppy disks. And you go down to the service bureau, the place where they made the film and the plates, and you'd have this huge stack of floppy disks numbered 1 to 30. And the guy would put them into his Mac one after another to copy this giant file, which would be assembled into one file on his computer. Then that would be printed. Like this is how it used to be, right? The drive technology people started getting sick of this, and drives started getting bigger and bigger. But not back then, drives weren't very big. There was a technology called zip drives, which were kind of designed to solve that problem. You could put one into your computer, copy a huge file, and then bring it down to the service bureau, and they plug it into their machine and output a plate or sheet of film or something from that, a magazine cover like setup or whatever from your zip drive. And these zip drives, they're like I don't know, big thick plastic things, removable, they worked, I gotta say, but they were expensive, but now you can't read them. I've got zip drives, other drive technology that is obsolete, that you can't read anymore. You can't get the data off this stuff anymore. It just doesn't. The Macs can't read them. All the new Mac software can't read this old shit, right? And the PC software, I've tried different ways. We've tried getting zip drives to plug into different things to try and get them to read properly, and they won't, right? So when you think about this, think about 20 years from now. Like, will anyone be able to read any of our file formats, right? In 50 years from now, if you save a PDF file, is that somebody's still going to be able to open that file in 50 years from now and read what's in it? So this is the problem. It's like your file format might not be readable in the future. The disk itself might degrade physically. There might be some kind of chemical reaction going on inside the disk that is making it worthless, making it into a coaster, right? Like that it's sitting there on the shelf turning into a coaster when it's supposed to be protecting your digital archive for the future. So there's that to think about. There's a lot to think about, decaying media. And then there's a whole digital space thing too to think about. If you're really serious about protecting shit for the future, there's a whole digital space. What happens if it disappears? Think strange post-apocalyptic future. There's no more internet, or you can't access it. The whole digital space goes down. You can't access images on clouds anymore. Something major happens that takes out the entire internet. Okay, this might be a bit far too much for people to think about, or maybe it's science fiction or whatever. But these are the things you got to think about when you're thinking about preserving your work for the future, for people to see. No, seriously, what happens if the internet disappears? What happens if it goes down? What happens if the cloud servers go down? You don't think it can happen? Well, last year, the Toronto Public Library, this huge library system that was absolutely excellent in the city of Toronto, Canada, got hacked. And this was last year. They're not up yet. Their digital services are still down. Nobody can access. The whole systems is still fucked. Like, it's been over 6 months now, I think. So that's an example, but it could even be larger than that. What if there's some kind of weird computer virus that just eats all the cloud data, right? I mean, and all your stuff is gone. It's gone. So there needs to be two methods of storage. The original hard copies and then digital archival copies. So this would be the equivalent of a physical copy. So you have a digital master copy, an archival copy. So a really high resolution scan of a slide, for example, and it's saved in a format that somebody in the future can read. Now, this is the other issue, right? If I save it as a TIFF file, is somebody in 100 years going to be able to open it? And if I save it on a Blu-ray disc, is anybody going to be able to open a Blu-ray disc in 100 years? Or is the disc itself not going to be functional after 60 years or whatever, or 50 years or 30 years? So all these things have to be considered. But the hard copy is the backup, right? Is the physical backup. So in this there's an important lesson here too. If you're just an ordinary person, not trying to preserve commercial work like I'm trying to do here with my photographic collection, which is quite large. But generally, most people don't have to deal with something like this, and they don't ever think that about these situations. But you really ought to, I think. And these days, there's no film backup these days. It's all digital. Pictures of your kids or the important times in your life, they're being saved into clouds that are so impermanent that you could lose it all. I was talking to the guy from Fujifilm Canada here yesterday about preservation of our stuff, and we're talking about this film body that they make that allows you to re-photograph stuff at super high resolution and take very clean big shots of stuff, which I'm thinking would be ideal for us. So I was talking to him yesterday, and he was saying what most people don't understand about digital stuff is that they're not backing it up, right? They're not backing it up. So he had this suggestion, which I think is amazing for everybody who is taking important photographs. And that's everybody. You know, if it's your kids, your parents you're taking pictures of digitally. He said every year you pick out 12 pictures or 20 pictures or whatever that meant the most to you that year. Just whatever, however many, like just a small number. He said there are companies that produce books, photo books for you. So you can say you pick the 24-page photo book or whatever, then you pick 24 pictures that you've taken over the year, your digital photos, and then have a physical book printed at the end of each year for your family or for your household that has, say, the 20 pictures of your family that you've picked for that year. And this is a physical hard copy. So if your digital file, if the clouds go down, you know, you're probably thinking, oh, Alex D is sounding like some prepper here. But I'm talking about digital prepping here. This is important. It's important to preserve stuff that's important to you for the future, right? So anyway. So if you want your great-great-grandkids to be able to see what you looked like, it might be wise to do these photo books every year. And so seek out these companies that can make these books for you, these like 24-page photo books or whatever. They exist online. You can find them. and then take 20 in December. Take 24 of your pictures, and then make a photo book called 2023, the Jones family, or whatever. And there you go. And you've got your backup. So all the other photos, I mean, they'll be there if you want to see them. If the clouds don't go down, or there's a sunspot and your cloud provider loses all your data, and then they're only liable to pay you the $30 a month you paid them for the service. That's all they, but they've lost all your photographs of your whole life. You don't want that to happen. So this is a really good suggestion, I think, for everybody, is to make hard copy backups of your digital content. Now I'm going the other way. I've got the hard copies already, and I'm trying to make digital backups of my hard copy content. So, I'm considering all that stuff now. I've learned so much. I mean, in the last month, I've been trying to do the research on how to do this properly, and it's just a serious job. It's my life's work, right? But it's also of significant cultural importance to Canada, to the country. So I want to do the best possible job I can do with this. It's critical. It's important. So, and also I'm making jewelry designs at the same time. So I got my hands full indeed. But anyway, I'm getting close to picking out the gear I'm going to need to do this job. I think I've got it all figured out. I've got some of it already that I've purchased over the years. Here's the thing. I bought the absolute top of the line best gear to do this 20 years ago, and now it's nothing, right? It's not even close to good now. So, and it was ridiculously expensive back then, but I might be able to use some of the gear for some stuff. But to do the digital archival preservation of these things, I'm going to have to get a special camera body, special lenses, special, I've got a special light source, the monitors to make sure that the color is accurate. Because you have to, everything has to be sort of at the same level when you're mastering these files. So it's like if you're a DJ, right? Or if you're a music producer and you're producing music, but you've got a set of shitty speakers in the studio, and you're not actually hearing what you're producing. It sounds banging when you're listening to it on these shitty fucking speakers, but when someone else listens to it on their headphones, they're going, "What the fuck?" Or it clips out or something when people put it on a stereo. So you get, if you're an audio person, you'll understand. So starting with a nice clean setup from it is the other thing, clean. It has to be dust. I have to get a dust-free room. I'm in an area to minimize dust, because the dust has to be taken off. Dust is everywhere, and it has to be taken off these slides at one at a time with Photoshop and shit. Like it's a huge, oh man, it's a massive job, but it has to be done. So your family photos are just as important, and I think they deserve the same consideration, right? Or if you're an artist, you're a painter, and you're taking photographs of your work, this is another thing you have to consider, right? About these images. I mean, a few images for a website is not the same as archival quality images that you can capture that are the master digital image. And then you can take from that image, you can take smaller files from that to make website images, or social media images, or book. You can extract large res files to do a book or whatever. So that's what we're going to do with that. But if you're at home, you really ought to do every year your family or your life. Even if you're a loner like me, you can You can take, the pictures you shot on your phone, the 24 pictures. And this is like Alex D 2023. This is like all my favorite photos that I shot that year. And stick that on the shelf. And that's recorded for posterity. So, sunspots, have at it with the Google Cloud or whatever, because you've got that at least in as backup for your life, right? For your great grandkids. Look what Dad looked like when he was 8 or whatever. This is. You may think that this digital, all the stuff you see on your phone is going to be there all the time, but it might not be. That's all I'm saying. We had a pandemic, didn't we? We never saw that one coming. And these kind of things happen by surprise. So create a book of your life each year, or your family's life. That's it. So now today in the studio, I'm photographing cannabis seed ear studs. I've got an 18-karat gold cannabis seed ear stud, and I've had to make a special mount to hold it steady, and so it rotates steadily. I have it on a mirror ball motor, and this ancient mirror ball motor that you get a disco ball and it turns a disco ball slowly. Well, this motor has it was like, I don't know, $50 or something. It's from the disco era, but it turns so smoothly. It doesn't like have this jaggedy kind of turning that really sucks when you're trying to shoot video of something turning. So I've had to make a tiny little clamp to hold this ear post from the cannabis seed ear stud, and then on the motor, and then it's turning, and then because the lenses I'm using the lens I'm using is this macro lens that has a very shallow depth of field. It's less than 1 millimeter sometimes. So, as it's turning, it goes out of focus, and I don't want that. So, oh man, I've spent hours trying to get this thing positioned right, just to get a photograph, just to get good video of it. I've got photographs of it, but I want video. So I'm experimenting with some really short video clips on my Instagram thing. I'm just seeing what happens to it. I still have no faith in Instagram anymore as a marketing tool. I really don't have faith in it. But I'm experimenting with some stuff, some different cuts, some short cuts, 15-second video, no longer, 2 minutes, different lengths, just to see what's comfortable. It's a lot easier making a 15-second video than a 30-second or 2-minute or 5-minute video. And once you start making shorter videos, it's almost a trap where you're like, oh, I don't need to make a longer one. I think this is what they're counting on all these platforms. The acceleration of the internet. They get everybody we'll be making 1-second videos before long. It'll be like just a strobing going across your eyes. So I'm going to go in and photograph that today. If I can get to there's like ice and snow on the way to the studio, which is just like literally a few feet away from where I'm sitting now. So I'll get there and photograph this cannabis seed ear stud. And next week, I'm going to talk about destroying art. I wanted to talk about it this week. This is kind of like destroying art, but not on purpose. But next week, we'll be destroying art on purpose. That's my goal anyway. I'm really curious as to why artists destroy their art, and maybe you are too. So we'll talk about that next week. Anyway, I'm going to get in there while I have the photo bug. Let me crack my knuckles. So I'm going to get behind the Nikons in the studio and start shooting this ear stud. See if I can get some good dramatic video to put up on Instagram and on the webpage. Thanks for listening to the Cannabis Goldsmith. If you've got this far and you wonder what the hell is this all about, anyway, I'm a jeweler jewelry designer in Upper Canada, in the eastern part of Ontario on the St. Lawrence River, and I design jewelry from cannabis plants. I take cannabis plants, grow them, take leaves, seeds, stems, roots. Even we take roots, flowers, and we cast them in precious metals and turn them into amazing jewelry pieces. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith. Just threw a couple more logs on the fire and had a huge bowl of French-Canadian pea soup for breakfast. I'm all set for the studio.